Hey, Texas fans, guess what? I'm back! Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it also. And in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Some of them are watchable, some aren't. That determination is left up to you, the viewer. At the end of this video, you can let me know in the comment section down below how you think I did. And hey, do me a favor, share this video somewhere, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, send it out via smoke signal, whatever it is that the kids are doing these days. I'm trying to get to 40,000 subscribers by the time the season starts. Now, that's a lofty goal, but I set a goal for myself once a year, every year, this time of year. And I can't hit that by myself. I need you guys' help. So this video or one of the other preview and I'll put a link up here to a playlist that's got all the preview and prediction videos that I've done so far. And keep in mind, I'm going to be doing about 60, somewhere between 60 and 75 of these over the course of the next couple of months. So stay tuned and make sure you check out these preview videos coming up. But anyway, let's get on with today's video, the official 2020 college football preview and prediction, game by game, for none other than the Texas Longhorns. Parker C. Good morning. Yeah, good morning, sir. Appreciate you supporting the channel over on the Patreon page, buddy. You wanted to see a preview for the Texas Longhorns? Ask, and I will deliver. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this preview and prediction video, Parker C. Don't forget, if you're a Patreon member, go over to the Patreon page. There's a post that says prediction videos. Leave me a comment on that post. Let me know what team it is you want me to do. That's where these teams are coming from. I'm not making these teams up. I'm not picking the order these teams are coming in. All the Patreon members are letting me know which teams it is they want to see, and those are the teams that I'm doing. If you want to check the Patreon page out and maybe consider joining, there's a link in the description of this video that will take you over there. I think the link says support the channel or something. You'll know it when you see it. Check the Patreon page out. I would really appreciate it. All right, here we go. Texas Longhorns. Now, we're going to do this the same way we've done the rest of them, right? So I'm going to brief recap of 2019. Then we're going to take a look at the roster for Texas, who'd they lose, who's coming back on both offense and defense. We're going to talk about some coaching changes that took place from last year to this year at Texas. And then I'm going to put the 2020 schedule up on the screen. I'm going to go through it game by game. And we're going to try to figure out, okay, what's Texas' record going to be in 2020? Who are they going to beat? Who are they going to lose to? Same as we've done the rest of them. All right, 2019 Texas Longhorns led by Tom Herman as head coach, right? That was his third year, heading into his fourth year. Now, they were 7-5 in the regular season last year. Disappointing. There's just no other way around it, especially when you look at the season they had the year before. And EHLINGER was coming back. They had some wide receivers. Very disappointing season. Now, there's some reasons for that. One, they just didn't live up to the potential. Number two, they did have some injuries that slowed them down. But 7-5 in the regular season, 8-5 after a win in the Alamo Bowl over Utah. And listen, I know what you're thinking. Texas fans were very excited about this win. They've spent 3, 4, 5 months now talking about this win in the Alamo Bowl. Does anybody remember that? Remember the Alamo? No, not the actual Alamo. I mean, does anyone remember the Alamo Bowl? Yes, Texas did win against Utah. Texas fan will tell you Utah was a top 15 team, almost top 10. They almost made the, they almost won the Pac-12. They gave, all this kind of stuff. But let me ask you something. Okay, great. You beat Utah. Okay, congratulations. They were the Pac-12 South champion. Not taking anything away from that. Okay, yeah, they beat Utah. But I mean, it's Utah. So I'd just like to ask you one question in regards of your win against Utah, or specifically when it comes to Utah. I just want to ask you one question. Who have they played? I mean, come on, it's a Pac-12 team. But anyway, congratulations to Texas on getting that win. You finished 8-5. Disappointing. It just is what it is. What had Tom Herman done prior to that? Well, the year before, of course, was the 10-win season. 10-4, 9-3 in the regular season. Lost the Big 12 title game to put you at 9-4. But then you beat my Georgia Bulldogs in the New Year's Six Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, to finish at 10-4. Your first 10-win season since all the way back in 2009 when you went 13-1, losing in the BCS title game. So it had been a while for Texas to hit that 10-win plateau, but you did it in 18. 17, Herman's first year, 6-6. You won the Texas Bowl that year, went over Missouri. So 3-0 in bowl games for Tom Herman, right? A New Year's 6 win, Sugar Bowl over Georgia. 0-1 in Big 12 title games, 25-15 overall record for Tom Herman. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. 25-15. So some good, some bad. Tom Herman's first 3 years there. Some of the good, the recruiting. Now let's take a look at the recruiting. I like to do this for every single team, and I like to look at the last 4 recruiting classes, as that is what makes up primarily the current roster, right? So 2020, you finished 8th in the nation, top 10 class, number 1 in the Big 12. 2019, you finished 3rd in the nation in recruiting, tops in the Big 12 again. 2018, 3rd in the nation again, 1st in the Big 12. 2017, a little bit of a down cycle there, finishing 25th nationally, but still that was good for 2nd within the Big 12. And I went back to 2016 on this one, and I'll tell you why in a second. 2016, 7th ranked class nationally, 1st in the Big 12. So 4 of the last 5 years, Texas has had top 10 classes. 2 of the last 5 years, you've had top 5 classes. And 4 of the last 5 years, you've had the number 1 class within the Big 12. In the year that you weren't number 1, you were number 2. 24/7 Sports puts out a team talent composite index where they look at the last 4 or 5 recruiting classes and they average out the talent on your roster. And they give you a ranking. Last year, Texas had the 7th most talented team in America. Now, I know there are reasons why this is not 100% accurate. Injuries, transfers, whatever. Players not living up to their recruiting ranking. I get that. And every team suffers with those issues, okay? But 4 of the last 5 classes were in the top 10. Depth should not have been an issue for Texas. So to have the season that you had last year, 7-5 in the regular season, 8-5 after a bowl win over Utah, to have that type of season as the 7th most talented team in America, and again, I know, and we'll get to some of the injuries in a minute, I get that, but 4 of the top 5, your last 5 classes were top 10. So it's not like this guy goes down and you're having to dig somebody out of the bleachers to put in his place. The roster is loaded with talented players. You've out-recruited Oklahoma. So a little hard to justify that in my opinion. Great recruiting classes, not really living up to it on the field though, with 2018 really being the only exception in recent memory that Texas has had anything close to a top 10 team. All right, anyway, let's talk about some major changes at Texas. 7 new coaches, including new offensive and defensive coordinators. So Tom Herman stuck around as head coach, but pretty much wholesale changes across the board when it comes to the assistant coaches. Not surprising, given the season that Texas had in 2019. The issue, of course, no spring practice, no real offseason program, at least not organized, not a normal one. You bring 7, 8 new coaches in, including a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator. You need practice. You need time to implement these new coaches' philosophies, schemes, plays, all that kind of stuff. This is not good for Texas to have missed spring ball, considering all these new coaches, especially new OC and new DC. On top of that, you're changing the scheme you run on defense, going from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Basically, on 2 months less practice, given what you would have had we had spring. Everybody is going to be affected by the coronavirus and no spring ball and limited off-season organized workouts and stuff like that. Everybody's going to be affected in some type of way. But I keep saying the teams that could be affected the most are going to be, of course, teams with new head coaches and completely new staffs. After that, though, teams with new quarterbacks, new offensive philosophies, or new offensive or defensive coordinators, and you fit some of that mold. How big of an impact will it be heading into the season? That remains to be seen. And like I said, I think the impact is going to be bigger on some teams than it is on others. But I do think that's something we have to consider when we're looking at Texas. Now, some of that can be overcome with veteran, experienced leadership. And Texas has some of that on both sides of the ball. So anyway, let's take a look at the roster, sort of what they lose, what's coming back. What sort of changes might we see offensively and defensively with these new coordinators? We'll start with the offense. Good news, 7 starters return, including, of course, quarterback Sam Ehlinger, who had a mixed season last year. He threw for more yards last year than he did in 2018, but the rushing numbers, particularly the rushing touchdowns, were way down for Sam Ehlinger. But he returns, running Tom Herman's quote-unquote power spread offense, right? Let's keep in mind Tom Herman's an offensive guy, so yes, you have an offensive coordinator in there. Tom Herman still has a lot of input into that offense. 32 touchdowns last year for Ehlinger, 10 interceptions, 3,663 yards, completed 65% of his passes. So a way above average year for any quarterback. Most quarterbacks would love to have these numbers, right? Not Heisman numbers, as we've seen some ridiculous quarterback numbers over the last few years with multiple players going over 4,000 yards and 40 and even 50 touchdowns in some cases. 663 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, you compare that to the year before, Texas's 10-win season from 18 to 19. Now, you went from 25 to 32 touchdowns throwing the ball. So he actually threw for 7 more touchdowns in 19 than he did in 18. Ehlinger, I'm talking about. But the rushing touchdowns went from 16 to 7, 9 less than you had. So that's a net loss of 1 touchdown year over year for Sam Ehlinger. Wide receivers, you got some work to do here. The bad news is you lose your top 2 wide receivers off of last year's team. Devin Duvernay, I believe was his name, and Colin Johnson, I think, was the other one. They're both gone. You got some returners. Jake Smith, Brennan Eagles, I think is his last name. They each had 6 touchdowns last year. So a lot of production to make up this year, losing those top 2 guys, Duvernay and Johnson. Now, that's the bad news. You got to replace that. Good news is 5-star wide receiver Jordan Whittington. He had to play running back. The running back situation at Texas last year was really inexcusable. It's really inexcusable how Texas allowed itself to get into a position where 1 or 2 injuries at the running back position completely decimated their roster of running backs. They had quarterbacks playing running back. They had wide receivers playing running back. It was just a complete mess. One of those wide receivers playing running back last year, at least they tried to, was this 5-star wide receiver. He was a freshman last year, Jordan Whittington. Hurt. They put him at running back and he got hurt. He went down. That's when you had the backup quarterback come in and play running. It was just a complete mess. Now you're moving him back to wide receiver this year, a slot receiver. He'll probably start in a slot receiver position would be my guess. And this is a player that's got a ton of potential, a lot of potential. Now, again, we haven't seen it yet at the college level because he was moved to running back last year as a freshman, hurt in the first game he played in, didn't play the rest of the year. I think it was a sports hernia was what he had there. But anyway, so a lot of potential there, but unproven potential, at least at the college level, but reason to be excited about him, I think. Now, you return Joshua Moore, right? He was suspended all of 2019. You get him back. That's good news. And a transfer from Michigan, Tariq Black, sort of disappeared really at Michigan. You had Nico Collins there, a couple of different options. Plus, Michigan didn't have the most dynamic or prolific offense that you've seen. He decided to transfer out. Texas was his landing spot. This is another kid that's got a ton of talent. This is a big deal. You needed something else at the wide receiver position after losing those 2 guys, considering the fact that Whittington didn't get to play any last year, and then you had the other guy that was suspended, so you don't really know what you're going to get out of him this year. You needed something. I like the move bringing a Tariq Black in. I don't know that he'll start. We'll see, but he's definitely going to play a lot, I think, in my opinion. So a mixed bag really at wide receiver. You definitely don't have any 2 wide receivers that we know are going to give you what Johnson and Duvernay gave you last year. But there are some kids on there that have the potential to give you that. But it's a wait and see thing to me with the wide receiver position this year at Texas. Running backs, Keontae Ingram comes back. He had almost 1,000 yards last year, which surprised me. But I think it was 800 and something yards he ended up having. And this 5-star freshman, you have to play this guy. Running back is one of the easiest positions to transition to, in my opinion, high school to college, particularly if you don't have to be the primary running back, right? You don't have to necessarily learn every single third down blitz pickup that you're supposed to do, right? They can put this guy in spots here and there. And if you're a great running back, you can take a handoff and run. If you can spot holes, you can spot holes. So you don't necessarily have to learn the entire playbook. You don't have to necessarily be amazing on third downs as a true freshman running back to get a lot of playing time. I think we'll see that from this Bijan Robinson. He's the real deal, a 5-star. He would have been successful, in my opinion, no matter where he went to school at. He chose Texas. I think this kid will play a lot. Now, on the offensive line, 3 starters return. 2 starters are gone. Second team, all Big 12 tackle Samuel Cosme, I think is his last name, if I'm saying that right, which I'm probably not. He returns. You are shuffling some pieces around. You're moving your right tackle to center. So you got to replace a couple of starters, and you're sort of doing the hokey pokey there, moving some pieces around. But I think overall, Texas' offensive line will probably be a little bit better this year than it was last year. No huge concerns there. Like I said, look at these recruiting classes like we talked about earlier. All these top 10 recruiting classes, there's got to be some talented linemen there on Texas's roster. I don't think they'll have a problem filling a couple of those spots that they lost from last year. All right, let's take a look at the defense, which surprisingly, overall, in my opinion, the defense has been better at Texas than the offense in most years, maybe 18 being the exception when EHLINGER had his huge offensive season. But the defense gets 9 starters back from last year. Now, like I mentioned, they've got a new defensive coordinator this year. Chris Ash comes in to take over the defense, and he's moving things around. He's changing from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Another situation I think where not having spring ball is going to have a bigger impact than maybe it'll have on some other teams that aren't changing defensive schemes or philosophies, but we'll see. Defensive line, Texas fans can let me know this. I think Texas might have the best defensive line in 2020 that they have had in 10 years, 15 years, maybe, a long time. I don't have any questions about Texas's defensive line, even in the Big 12 where we like to make fun of them for not really playing much defense and yada, yada, yada. Texas has got some studs on the defensive line, some future NFL players, in my opinion. Marquise, I know I'm going to say this name wrong, Bimage, B-I-M-A-G-E. Listen, I don't name these people, okay? I'm assuming their parents do. The whole, when they're born and you put whatever on the birth certificate. I don't name these people, so it's not my fault if I'm saying their names wrong. But he's a defensive end senior, absolute beast, potential NFL guy, and then defensive tackle Graham. These are 2 studs along the front, no question about it, none, 0. The nose tackle, defensive end, you're loaded along the front. The front 4 will not be a question mark for Texas. It's Osai or whatever the hell. You got some names, but this OSSAI defensive end, another great player. No issues along the defensive front. Linebacker, not necessarily the case. You got some questions there. You got some holes you got to fill on the inside at the linebacker position. Again, check the recruiting. I'm not saying the talent is not there. What I'm saying is there's not really anybody we've seen do it yet on the college level. You're going to have to find some answers there at inside linebacker. Defensive backs, again, no questions. You've got like 4 or 5 cornerbacks returning that all had significant playing time last year, whether that be a starter role, a nickel role, a dime role, a backup role, whatever the case. But Green, Jamison, Thompson, Keontae Watson, I believe is his name. Safeties, again, how many years in a row, but probably the best safety duo definitely the best safety duo within the Big 12. One of the best safety duos in all of college football. Both juniors, Caden Stearns, BJ Foster. 3-4 years ago, whatever it was, Texas was signing like the number 1 and number 2 safety out of high school. It seemed like every year that 2 of these guys right here, they're both future NFL players. The only real question mark to me about Texas's defense, honestly, is in the middle there at inside linebacker. Check the recruiting. There's talent there. Let's see them do it on the field, though, and also. All right, that does it for looking at the roster. Now it's time to put the schedule up on the screen and find out what's going to happen. All right, here we go. I'm going to put the schedule up on the screen. Here we're going to go through it game by game. I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win each and every week and do my best to explain to you why I think that is. Now, pretty tough non-con schedule for Texas this year, in my opinion. South Florida, although not a Power 5 team and had sort of a down year last year, not the worst group of 5 team you could be scheduling. So I don't think this is a terrible scheduling decision or a quote-unquote cupcake type game. I mean, this is a pretty good matchup here. Now, obviously, Texas is a lot better, way more talented. I'm picking Texas to win. I just don't think you're going to lose to South Florida. Basically, the point I'm making is I don't think this is a game where people will point and go, "Oh, why are you scheduling South Florida?" It's a pretty good game here. Now, that's not the issue. You win. The issue is week 2. You got to go on the road and play at LSU. How amazing was last year's LSU-Texas game? And let me make this point, too, for for Texas haters. And people think I hate Texas. I don't. Texas takes a lot of crap for last year. And again, a lot of it they deserve. Look at how they've recruited. Having a few injuries at the running back position or wherever else should not cripple a team like that. Not a team that's recruited like that. So I get that and understand that. But watch the Texas-LSU game, okay? Keeping in mind what we know now about LSU, I want you to watch the Texas-LSU game again. Go to YouTube, whatever, you can find it. You can even find a condensed highlight version or whatever. Watch that game again. Then watch any Texas game in the middle to end of the season. That was not the same team, clearly. Clearly. They gave LSU one of the toughest tests they faced all season. LSU went on to beat everyone they played, finishing 15-0, right? That included wins over teams like Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, Oklahoma. The list, so it's not like they didn't beat any good teams to get where they got, and Texas was one of those teams. And go back and rewatch that game. Texas gave LSU everything they could handle in that game. One of the most entertaining games we've seen in college football in a long, long time. I don't think there's any way this year's game can live up to what we saw in 2019 for a variety of reasons. Playing at LSU, Texas fan, is a totally different animal, okay? I'm just telling you right now, it's not like anything Texas has played at in maybe ever. I'm an SEC homer, so feel free to type about that if you want to, but let me explain this to you. The biggest game you play every year is against Oklahoma, all right? Great. That's at a neutral site game. 50% of those fans are Texas fans. 50% of them are Oklahoma fans, all right? That's not going to be the case when you go into LSU. These people are absolutely insane. Take it from me. I'm telling you. And I don't know when this game is going to be played. I'm guessing it's going to be a night game. Good luck is all I can tell you. Nothing anyone on Texas's roster has ever seen is going to compare to what they see when they take the field in this game against LSU. I don't think LSU is going to be as good as they were last year. Okay, they lose Joe Burrow. They lose Joe Brady, who I think should get just as much credit as Burrow for what we saw offensively from LSU last year. They lose a ton of players. They lose a ton of coaches. I just don't see any way LSU is as good as they were last year. You, Texas, are probably better than you were last year. You're definitely going to be better in 2020 than you were the second half of 2019. How much better are you going to be in week 2 than you were in week 2 last year, though? Maybe a little bit better. You're not winning on the road at LSU. It's just not happening. I'm sorry. You're losing. Hashtag SEC, I guess, but you're not beating the Corn Dogs in Baton Rouge. You're 1-1. Week 3, UTEP. If you've been around this channel for a while, you're probably excited to see this matchup for no particular reason, but Texas will beat UTEP. You rebound without a problem. You're 2-1 heading into your bye week, which means when you come out of your bye week, you have 9 straight Big 12 matchups without an off week. Okay? Now, Big 12 plays 9 conference games. They play a round robin. There's 10 teams in the Big 12. Every single team plays the 9 other teams. Your bye week is after week 3. So you get all 9 of your conference matchups in a row. Poor scheduling, in my opinion. This is, I don't know why this is. I don't know if this was a conscious decision that was made so that you could get a bye week before you have to go on the road and play Kansas State for no particular reason, or if there was some other reason you had to put this bye week here. But this is stupid. This bye week should be about 3 or 4 weeks down the road. You need to do better. But anyway, you open up Big 12 play after your bye week on the road at Kansas State. Kansas State is a team that I think, generally speaking, is headed in the right direction. I really like their coaching staff. They came down from North Dakota State, and if you know anything about football at all, you know what North Dakota State has done over the last 10 years. They've dominated FCS. I don't know how many titles have they won, 5 or 6, whatever it is, putting players in the NFL. It's just insane. That coaching staff, second year at Kansas State now. Unfortunately, I'm not sold on Kansas State's roster in 2020. Next year, maybe a different story. And I still think Kansas State can be a good team this year. I don't think this is a gimme for Texas. I really don't. But I do think you win on the road at Kansas State. You're 1-0 in the Big 12. Then you get the matchup against Oklahoma, the Red River shootout. People pretend to call it the rivalry now because you're not allowed to say the word shootout for whatever reason. I think this is going to be a classic Texas OU game. I think this is going to be close. I'm a little lower on Oklahoma this year than I have been in the last several years. And I've already done an Oklahoma version of this video. If for some reason you haven't seen it and you want to watch it, just click back a couple of videos or check the playlist on the channel called 2020 Preview and Predictions. You'll see it in there. So if you've seen that video, you already know which way I'm headed with this pick here. I think Texas probably a little better in 2020 than they were last year. I think Oklahoma probably not quite the team in 2019 or in 2020 that they were last year. So Oklahoma step back this year. Texas step forward, I think. Oklahoma loses its best two players on defense, Parnell Motley and was it Kenneth Murray, the linebacker? And their defense wasn't that good to start with. First time playing an inexperienced quarterback in 3 or 4 years, right? They're finally going to play this Spencer Rattler, a kid they recruited instead of playing a transfer, which is what they've done, it seems like, forever. I think you guys get the win here against Oklahoma. Now, this game could go either. This is a hard game to pick. It really is. I think I've picked Oklahoma the last couple of years. I'm picking Texas this year to win this game. I don't call it a gut feeling, whatever. I think Texas comes out and wins this game. And I think this is the start of people taking Texas seriously in 2020. I think up to this point, all people are going to do is talk about what I think is going to be a loss to LSU. You sort of lost in the shuffle for a couple of weeks here with UTEP, a bye week on the road at Kansas State. Everybody's going to start paying attention again this week when you play Oklahoma. I think you come out and get the job done. I think you beat OU. Then you host West Virginia, one of the longest trips you can possibly take within the Big 12, Morgantown, West Virginia to Austin, Texas. I think you beat West Virginia. West Virginia is another team that's in year 2 of a brand new coaching staff that I like. But again, the roster at West Virginia is the issue to me. I just feel like they need another year, maybe even 2 at West Virginia before they can get to a point where I could feel comfortable picking them to win some of these bigger games on their schedule. You get them at home, I think you get the win. And you got to go on the road and play Texas Tech. I say the same thing about Texas Tech, I think, every single time. But the reason I say it is because it's true. Texas Tech go out one week and beat somebody 35-3, and they go out the next week and lose a game 60-62. It's just the weirdest thing to watch with Texas Tech. You have to play there. I'm not sure that matters. I think you beat Texas Tech. You're on a hell of a roll. Then you host Baylor. Baylor lost their whole coaching staff. Matt Rule gone to the Carolina Panthers and the NFL. They lose some talent. Now, they played a lot of QBs last year. That'll benefit them this year. I think you beat Baylor, though. Baylor's a hard team for me to figure out. Are they going to be as good as they were last year? I don't think so. I think you look at Texas in 18, makes the Sugar Bowl, a couple of steps back in 19. Baylor could be facing a similar situation. They made the Sugar Bowl, of course, in 19. They could be taking a couple of steps back in 20. I got you beating the Bears at home. On the road, play Kansas, Les Miles, just no talent there. Some of it is Les Miles' fault. Well, 1 year of it is. But the recruiting here, without getting into a whole drawn-out story, the previous coaching staff there signed a ton of junior college transfers over a 2 or 3 year period. And because of that, now they're only able to sign about 20 players a year for the next couple of years. It's a complicated thing, but basically you sign a high school kid, he's there 4 years, he leaves, it's a rotating thing, sign 25 players a year, blah, blah, blah. Every time you sign a junior college transfer with only 2 years of eligibility left, you're only getting him for 2 years, and you're not able to backfill that scholarship for another 2 years. It's confusing, but just trust me when I tell you that they're not able to recruit a full class last year, this year, or next year. And that's hurting them right now, regardless of whether you think Les Miles is an amazing coach or a terrible coach. Not beating Texas this year. Sorry, grass eater. You take the L to the Longhorn. Then you 2 home games here against TCU and Iowa State. And let me say something about these 2 games here. You could easily lose one of these 2 games. Easily. These are both going to be pretty good teams. They're both well coached. They both have some talent. Not the talent you have, though. A typical Texas team that we've seen for pretty much the last 15 years, with the exception of 2018. Every single Texas team we've seen would lose one of these two games. They just would. Don't even argue with me, Texas fan. Go back and look at every season you've had. You've lost one of these two kinds of, you've lost games like this every single year. Home against TCU, home against Iowa State. You could go 1-1 there. I've got you winning them both. Okay, I have a feeling you're going to lose that game to LSU, and you're going to go on a roll. Rolling through Oklahoma, beating Baylor, beating Kansas, beating TCU at home, beating Iowa State at home, setting up a huge, huge matchup Friday after Thanksgiving. Texas at Oklahoma State. Depending on what Oklahoma does and what Oklahoma State does and what you do, this could be basically a play-in game for the Big 12 title. Now, if I'm 100% accurate with this schedule, you will have 0 Big 12 losses heading into this game, in which case this game may not even matter, at least in terms of making the Big 12 title game. Now, it could matter for your playoff chances. We've yet to see a 2-loss team make the playoffs, right? They've all been undefeated or 1-loss teams. If I'm right, you're sitting on 1 loss already. If you lose to Oklahoma State, that would be your 2nd loss. You probably still get into the Big 12 title game at 10-2 with only 1 conference loss. But even if you win the Big 12 title game, would that be good enough to make the playoff? Now, we're getting way ahead of the point of this video here, but so what I'm saying is this: if things play out in the Big 12 the way I think they will, this is a huge game. Yes, you could lose and still make the Big 12 title game, but there could be way more on the line for Texas at this game against Oklahoma State than just a trip to the Big 12 title game. You lose. I think Oklahoma State beats you. If you've watched the Oklahoma video, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know now about how I feel about Oklahoma State in 2020. But I think you go. Listen, the 2 games before this are tough games. Tough games. TCU's the only team in the Big 12 that consistently plays defense. You're going to get a little beat up in that game. Iowa State, very well coached. You're going to lose to Oklahoma State. There it is. Texas Longhorns, 2020. You're going to finish 10-2 with a trip to the Big 12 title game. Is that the season you hope for? Cup all the way full? No. But I think that's a great season for Texas, especially given the history over the last 15 years. It's a good season. Get to the Big 12 title game, try to win it. Who knows? Maybe we've got some sort of chaos at the end of the season and a 2-loss Texas team that wins the Big 12 at 11-2 finds a way to get in. We'll see. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that video and have a good morning.